Welcome everyone to yet another Express series by Sonalis Cubo, an element where we are trying to emit change, to drive conscious, uh, you know, uh, conversation over a subject. And today it is very, very interesting for me because I have a very interesting woman who is joining with us today. And Yes, I'm Vayjayanti Pugalia, and I welcome you to this very, very special edition. Before I introduce my guest today to all of you, I would like to speak about the very core essence of today's topic, which happens to be anxiety. Anxiety is more than just feeling stressed or worried. While we are stressed and we have these very anxious feelings, we are always under pressure. And how does it remove? Once the stressor is removed, once the situation is removed, we feel all okay. But if that situation persists and is there to stay, we have a particular reason to worry, and that reason and that state of mind happens to be an anxiety disorder. And it is really alarming because in the year a polling in 2017, it was found that more than 14% of the Indian population goes through an anxiety disorder. And it is really, really tough and really alarming to see how we are torturing ourselves to this particular element, which is called anxiety. And today, to talk about this, I have with me a very, very enterprising lady who is here with us. So, firstly, I would like to welcome Bryn Bamber. Bryn, welcome to today's show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So, I would like to start by introducing Bryn. And Bryn is a mental health professional and is trained in core energetics. She has lived for years to be a sensitive perfectionist with anxiety courses. And she's going to speak more about core energetics, and we would know what it is all about. She mainly works with female identified non binary artists and healers and entrepreneurs. And her training includes vitals like the cranios sacral level 1, the hatha yoga, the kundali and a dreams teacher. It is miraculous to see how she has studied mental wellness and the health of human beings and how she can help them around the same. She has written, and her speaking skills are very well covered by and are featured in Tiny Buddha, Introvert Dear, and many other portals like Sweatpants and Coffee, etc. And you can hear these podcasts and know more about her teachings. But I welcome Bryn today to talk more about her work, more about what she has to share on the subject of anxiety. So, Bryn, welcome today to my show. And I am super excited to discuss today's very core topic, which is anxiety. But before we start talking about anxiety, would you like to share a little bit of your early life, your journey till now, so that our viewers know more about you?
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, my name is Bryn. It's pronounced Bryn. Sorry, I didn't say
Right.
that to you earlier. But yeah, I grew up in the United States and in Canada. So my family moved around a lot as a child, and I was pretty shy, and I was pretty anxious for a lot of my life, kind of, studious, but quiet and not that outgoing. And as I got older, I I went into a job in a nonprofit where I was working with marginalized youth here in Canada. and it was kind of my dream job. It was the job I was very excited to do. And what I found is that my anxiety just got more and more. My perfectionism got more and more. And eventually it got to a point where I felt like I couldn't really do the job. I felt like it was too much. And I didn't know what to do at that point. I felt very confused because this was the job that I wanted. This is what I studied in school, and I was very excited to get the job. And so I didn't feel like I could look for another job at that point. And so that was the moment for me where I decided to go to Yashodhara Ashram, which is an ashram in Canada. It's in British Columbia in the Kootenay Mountains, and it's in the Shivananda lineage. So it was founded by Swami Radha, and she was a student of Shivananda. And I felt like I needed to go somewhere and learn more about myself and about my mind and about my anxiety, so that I could figure out really what my career was meant to be, and also how to do it sustainably, because at that point I wasn't able to do this job that I thought was important and that in some ways I really loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went initially for a short time. I went for a month. I committed to a month, and then I liked it, and then I committed more and more and more, and took some courses and took Hatha teacher training and the Kundalini and Dream teacher training, and I ended up living there for 2 years in the end. So, partially on course, partially kind of as an intern, helping keep the community running, and I learned so much about yoga up to that point. I had done a little bit of yoga. Actually, my mom does yoga, and even my grandmother went to a different Shivananda ashram in Canada. My grandmother did yoga, which is rare for that generation to do it in Canada. So I knew a little bit about yoga, but I wasn't that connected to it. But it was there that I started to get more deeply connected to meditation, the different limbs.
So how long were you there in the ashram, and why did you choose like this particular ashram, if I have to ask you?
Yeah, of course. So I was there for over 2 years, all told. And I ended up at this ashram because at that time I had a friend who had been there, and she had had a very deep and powerful experience in her time there. And she was starting to share with me some of the meditations, some of the reading, the texts, and it was actually one of the few things that actually helped with my anxiety at that time. Was I remember the first time I ever did this particular standing meditation, and it was like, whoa, this works. Like, what is this? And so that was for me the seed.
So that's amazing, Bryn, right? Am I correct now? The Bryn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, viewers, isn't it amazing? Yoga, which originates from our country, has reached millions and millions of spaces outside the country. And here, Bryn is done this in the lineage of the Shivanandas at the Yashodhara Ashram in Canada, right? And she is joining us today from Toronto, and she is going to be sharing how meditation changed her life. But one question I have, Bryn, while you are explaining about your early life, you use two words. You use anxiety, and you use another word, which is perfectionism. So before I move ahead, do you think, like, I'm a perfectionist? I'm a hardcore perfectionist. So if I have to ask you very simply saying that, does perfectionism drive anxiety? And how can we, because you have experienced it right hand, Uh,
Mhm.
so you would be
Mhm.
able to say better as to where to draw the line, between
Mhm.
perfectionism. Okay, now stop. Now you're gonna start getting anxious. Can you share some light
Right.
on that? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, but so because my training at the ashram, but then also beyond that in core energetics it's all very focused on the body. And so what I would say about that is notice your body, because there's a difference between wanting to put quality into something, and wanting to put quality into something is amazing. I highly encourage everyone to put quality into the things that are important to them, into their relationships, into their career. I think I'm not at all against quality, but you know that it's turning into perfectionism if you're starting to get tense, if your shoulders maybe are tensing, or your heart feels stuck, or you're feeling shaky. Like it doesn't feel, there's a different feeling that will come over you when you're in more perfectionism that is connected to anxiety. So that's what I would say, is just tune into, how is your body feeling? Is your body feeling like, yes, I'm putting quality, I want, like it feels good. When you're working and you love what you do, your body will feel good and alive. You know that it's turning into anxiety, perfectionism, when your body starts to, and you're kind of you're forcing yourself. You want to take a nap or take a break, but you're like, no, I must keep going. And you drink more coffee. That's when you know it's starting to get into the less healthy type of perfectionism.
Right. And I think the need to become a perfectionist is also because everything is so competitive outside the
Mm-hmm.
world. And you want to be, that you are under the radar. And if you are a professional, or you're trying too hard at a relationship to work, personally or at a professional level, there's so much of competition, and there's so much of reading about you. Like you
Mm-hmm.
know that people are probably expectations,
Mm-hmm.
judgment around you. Do you think that these are the things that one needs to actually let go, because that gives a level of anxiety in your life?
Yes. Yes. I totally agree. And it's similar in the sense that, for me, it's like, I want to be a good person. I don't want to not care at all what other people think of me. I want to be kind. I want to be respectful. I have these values in my life, which I imagine you do, and the listeners, the people watching, have as well. You have these values in your life. But again, when it gets to the point of people pleasing, of doing something you don't believe in or you don't feel is right to make someone else like you, that's when we start to get into trouble. And again, your body is a tool that you can use. If you tune in, if you take a few deep breaths into your belly and you feel yourself tensing, or you feel nauseous, or you feel, bad in some way, that might be a sign that you're going into people pleasing, trying to do something for somebody else, as opposed to doing what you think is right, following your own moral compass, you know, wanting to be competitive in the sense that you want to do a good job and you want to make enough money to take
Yeah,
care of yourself and your family. There's nothing wrong with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But again, when you're one of the things that I sometimes will do is I'll twist myself for somebody else. Like, I don't really want to do it this way, but I can tell they want me to do it this way, so I'll change. And that's the thing I have to watch, and I would recommend everyone watching today looks for is, are you twisting yourself for someone else?
So, yes, I'm going to get to these a little later once I understand more about the main thing that you are dealing, just core energetics. Because,
Mm-hmm.
however, I could understand about your work is that you strongly work with this module called core energetics. And so, if you would like to tell the viewers what it is, I think it's going to be great. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So core energetics is, again, I'm a mental health professional, and my training is core energetics, and it brings together the body, the mind, and the spirit. So it's similar in some ways to traditional psychotherapy. I don't know how often people in India are going to therapists, but in the West, it's relatively common. It's still not totally accepted. There's still a stigma around it here as well, but it's getting more accepted. And in therapy, in talk therapy, which is not what I do, but it's similar in some ways to what I do, you talk about what happened to you as a child and the patterns and habits that you formed during childhood that you take into your adult life. And that sometimes it was good when you were a kid that you were doing this. An example could be, it was good when you were a kid, you were very obedient because you had to stay connected to your parents or your caregivers. You had to do what they said because that's your primary connection, right? These are your source, that your parents or your caregivers are your sources of love, of food, of shelter. But what can happen is, as you grow and as you're an adult, you can start being very, very obedient, maybe to a boss or maybe to your spouse. And that, when you're an adult, it doesn't quite make sense to be the same amount of obedient as you were with your parents, because as an adult, you actually have choice, right? Like if a boss is very abusive, you can apply for other jobs. You can look for other sources. If your spouse is very abusive, you can split up.
Yes.
But sometimes we're in this pattern because with our parents, they were the only one. We didn't have any other option. So we just, no matter what our parents did, we had to stay obedient. So we're looking at those patterns from childhood and starting to see them and to say, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing with my boss, or oh my God, I'm doing the same thing with my spouse. And then starting to change it. And the difference between what I do and what you would do in talk therapy is I also use the body as a tool. And as you can see, I'm already, like in our conversation, I'm already talking about the body all the time. But the way that these experiences from childhood impact our body. So an example could be that if you imagine a young child, maybe 5 years old, that's very angry. You know, kids, they get angry and they want to stomp and they want to, you know, throw a temper tantrum, and that, but they know that it's not going to go well. They know that their parents or their caregivers are maybe going to yell at them, maybe going to hurt them in some way. Maybe they'll make fun of them or withdraw. Even a parent withdrawing their love and attention is very impactful on a child. And so the child learns that they can't be angry. They've done it a few times. It doesn't go well. Every time it doesn't go well. So they need to stop the anger. And the way that you would do that as a 5-year-old is they hold their breath slightly. They kind of tense their shoulders to hold, you know, they want to do this, but they do this. They keep it, maybe tense their jaw. And then if you imagine this child growing up, they do that for 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years. And it results in chronic tension in the body. It results in holding of the breath more often. People with chronic anger suppression have tension in their jaw. They have usually neck pain, shoulder pain, sometimes even their hips has this chronic tension. So part of what I'm doing with my clients as well is talking about the story. You know, we had the story about, I was saying about maybe being very obedient, but then also how did that impact your body?
Correct.
How did that, so we can heal it on the physical level as well, because sometimes you can understand, like, I'm in this dynamic with my boss that's unhealthy, but you can't quite get out of it. And sometimes it's because these patterns are physically stored. And so sometimes I'm doing movements with my clients or different ways to work with that those bands of chronic tension.
That's amazing, Bryn, because you are in a way tracing the presence of a person with any disorder or tension or something that that person is not comfortable, maybe like a back pain or a,
Mm-hmm.
like a joint pain or upset
Mm-hmm.
stomach or relationship disorder or not being able to be consistent at work
Mm-hmm.
or with a lot of headaches. So I'm sure
Right.
all these symptoms, what I understand, is like you trace it back to that person's early years. And
Yes.
that's the core energy that one carries from a childhood as
Yeah.
that person is emerging to be a young adolescent and so on, or a grown up. And that's where you see where in that graph as to what happened in the past, and you channelize it through movements and meditation and talk therapy. And yes, you're very
Yeah.
correct. In India too, we don't have, it's still a stigma in India too if you're going in
Yeah.
to see a therapist, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you are having a mental disorder. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that it should be called more like a talk therapy, wherein you have a professional guiding you through the series of problems. So yes, it's very understandable what you just said, that these lot of these medical issues that one has is actually the core energetics, which is
Mm-hmm.
you are able to trace through your work. uh,
Mm-hmm.
will you like to give us an example without naming any particular client of yours where you felt that that person was suffering from this, and then you
Mm-hmm.
later on found out through core energetics that the history was this? Would you like to share that with us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had clients who, were very impacted. They weren't getting out of bed in the morning. They weren't,
Yeah.
working. I had one client, and they were very smart,
Mhm.
but they didn't have a job. They couldn't function. And this client had been in talk therapy for a long time, and they understood actually the story and what had happened,
Mhm.
a lot of it, but because it was still embedded in the body,
Right.
they weren't able to kind of put these things into action.
Right.
And then, this was a client who it was the anger thing, where they were never angry. They just, all of the anger
Suppressed. Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a lot of what we've been working on, is starting to move the anger, starting to get angry, starting to say, what they're angry about.
Right.
And the the life is changing. Like, they're able now to have a business. They're able now to make money. They're able to move out of their parents.
No, I think it's very interesting what you're doing through the method of core energetics. So I would like to ask you, Bran, what do you think the anxiety management in the pandemic should be? Because there's so much
Right.
of anxiousness around. Like people are, they are in anticipation, confusion as to what the future holds. So what do you want to talk about anxiety to them about?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things we were talking about a little bit before we pressed record today is how much news
Yes.
you watch. And I know for myself, because I know I'm prone to anxiety, when the pandemic started, I knew I needed to limit the amount of information I was taking in. Again, I'm not saying to pretend it's not happening or not watch any news, but to limit. Because for me, and if any of you watching are feeling anxious a lot of the time right now, I would recommend you limit the amount of news you're consuming. Because, if that's what's triggering you, it's you're just feeding it if you're watching the news all the time, and there's always more news and more studies and more statistics. And my recommendation is to watch as much news as you need to keep yourself safe. It's important to understand what the government is doing and what actions you need to take, and when it's important to wear a mask and when it's not. Those pieces of information are important. But once you have that,
limit yourself.
Turn it off. Yeah. And for me, some of the things that have been helping me through the pandemic is like listening to podcasts and watching videos that were recorded before the pandemic. Just to learn something, to continue feeding my mind, feeding my brain, but to not be constantly, everything right now has pandemic all over it. And so listening to podcasts from 2018 or 2019 before we knew this was happening, so I can just learn and just have moments of, it's like a break. Like, I'm going to take a break from this reality. The other thing that I would recommend that's a little more body-centered is a Tibetan Buddhist practice that I learned from Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist monk here in Canada, a Western woman. And that is to really feel the anxiety in your body. So if you're feeling anxious, to take some time, pause if you can. If you're locked down, it's a good time. You don't have much you can do. But to breathe and notice, where's the vibration in your body. So everyone who's watching right now, we'll just do this for a minute, but just notice, just scan through your body and notice if there's a place in your body that feels more tense. And maybe notice the places in your body that maybe feel good and feel energized, and which parts feel maybe pain or tension or numbness. And just start to breathe those in. So one thing that can happen with anxiety is we can fight it. We feel anxious, then we don't want to feel anxious. And so it's like internal fight that's happening. And so this exercise, which is called Tonglen, you let it be there. You breathe it in. You welcome that vibration into your body. And you basically, in some ways, you cut it in half, because a lot of times we have anxiety, we don't want to be anxious, we have twice.
So it's like what you're trying to tell is that you become conscious that, okay, now I am anxious. There are certain areas in my body which is feeling tensed because I'm in a state of anxiety, maybe about the future, maybe it's been a big long day or anything. Yeah. So I think what you're just trying to say right now, Bryn, is that we agree to it, we surrender to it.
Yes.
And then there is a alternate mechanism that we bring, that we are not letting you stay in my body, and we fight it and we break it up. That's okay.
Yeah, so we don't want to do the fighting. The fighting just makes it worse. We can't fight anxiety. Once we're in it, we're in it.
Right.
So just to accept it, to feel the vibration in your body, to realize it's not going to kill you.
Right.
You feel some tension in your heart, maybe. You feel some tension in your shoulders. You can handle this. Mm-hmm. You can feel this anxiety, and you're going to survive. Mm-hmm. To start to, it really is surrendering to the experience of anxiety. And it doesn't necessarily go away right away, but it's going to lessen the amount of pain because you're no longer fighting it. It's going to decrease the pain. And in some instances, it does just completely go away once you accept it and let it in.
That is just such an amazing exercise that we can do with our body, Bryn. What you just explained, that is, we don't fight it. Usually we get more anxious when we are fighting it. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, I'm like so huddled up. How am I doing? Oh, I'm so tensed. And I do understand, because we do go under, as I said, I'm a perfectionist. So maybe if not because of the pandemic, but because I'm a perfectionist, and or maybe I have this XYZ chores which needs to be finished today and I'm lacking behind, I'm not doing it, it makes me anxious. So yes, it's an amazing exercise, viewers. What Bryn just said is that we sit with it, we calm ourselves down, take long breaths, and we initialize the process by first accepting that, okay, there are certain modules in our body that we are feeling tensed about. And then once we accept it, we know, as very beautifully Bryn said, it's not that it's going to kill you. So we just need to then settle it down by taking deep breaths and not fight it, but accept it and kill it by accepting it. So it's not very easy. I know it sounds so like a fluid talk, which I'm doing right now. I'm sure it needs a lot of practice, but at least we can start by being conscious about it, which is important. Because, Bryn, I think anxiety is like this, it's like a voice is following us all the time. And that voice is so loud, which keeps coming from within and telling us, do this, or you've not done that, or you're lacking behind, or see someone's judging you, or see you have not lived up to someone's expectation. Whatever word you want to put it to, it's anxiety. And that voice is so loud in your head. And the funny part is that you will be the only one hearing that voice. Even if it's the loudest, you're the only one who's hearing it. So that particular thing is pretty scary. And yes, just like the West, in India too, we are facing this challenge of mental health. It's becoming a core, essential subject of discussion during the pandemic more, because yes, because I think, Bryn, a lot of people are very concerned about the future, like their work or their children's education. So basically the sustainable areas of life. So what do you want to say to them? These people. Okay, news, we did talk about that. News is something which really gears up into the fifth gear to the anxiety level. But what other things that people can tell themselves that it's okay, like regarding their work, regarding their children? I think these are a few things which really disturb a common man.
Yeah, so the first thing before I answer that question, I do have a video recording of that practice. So if you want to, maybe after our call, I can give it to you and you can post it.
Yes, otherwise, viewers, please connect to Bryn. You can visit her Facebook page. Maybe, Bryn, you can post it again once on your Facebook, and it's there in her Instagram as well. And definitely, you'll please share the video with me, Bryn, and I will make sure that my viewers get it. I'll upload it on my page. But yes, people, if you want to get more connected to core energetics that Bryn actually helps you deal with in terms of anxiety, please reach out to her by the name. I love the term that you use to describe. What is it, Bryn, that you call yourself?
Emotional body worker. Is
yes,
that the
but
one?
your handle on the Facebook.
Career burnout coach.
Yes, career burnout coach. That's amazing, and you can search for Bryn Bamber, and you can reach out to her. And yes, that video, that would be really helpful, Bryn, for people to know how this exercise happens. That's very, very important. And you were saying something else about
right. Yeah. So I wanted to answer your question about people who are worried about their jobs right now, who are worried about their children's school. So one thing that I try to do for myself and I encourage my clients to do as well is to zoom out. So to think about how am I going to feel about this moment in 10 years? When I look back in 10 years, you know, the pandemic is over, they found a vaccine, you know, societies are being rebuilt. Yes, right now is a very painful time, and you know, if your family member is sick, it is very scary and it's very real, and I don't at all want to gloss over it, and there's a lot of suffering that is happening. And if your concern is, you know, if your family members are generally safe in this moment and your concern is more financial or your child's school, if you can zoom out to 10 years from now, when this is all over, how are you going to feel? How is your family going to have gotten through this? Because yes, this time is very strange and we don't know what's going to happen. And there are a lot of people working on a solution. There's a lot of energy that's being put towards that. And so, and we are going to get through this. And there is, I mean, you know, some people aren't. Some people are dying. It's important to acknowledge that that is a reality, and I don't want to gloss over that. But the majority of us are going to get through it. And so to think about far in the future, you know, this will be an intense story that we tell.
Our
You know,
generations to come, yes.
Yes. And we're going to survive, and we're going to, you know, if your school is delayed for a year in the span, in the long span of your lifetime is not that long. Or if your finances are impacted for this year, in the long term, it's not going to be as big of an impact as I think some people are worried about.
That's very intelligent way of combating what you've just said, Brown. That is to just zoom out and look into a far future. 10 years is a great time that you have pinned it down to, wherein we can visualize. And as you know, that affirmation and visualization is again another beautiful form of healing, which puts in so much of positivity in our present, because the moment we initialize a future as positive, our presence immediately becomes positive. So the zoom out that you have expressed for the viewers to practice and not get anxious about what's happening in this pandemic, it's a beautiful tool. And along with the video that I'm soon going to be sharing on my page, and they can visit on your pages too, I'm sure the exercise in that video would help them to, deal with anxiety better. Because whether it is an irritated colleague or a demanding mother-in-law or a spouse or a speeding driver, the most commonplace, these are the most commonplace examples. And one thing that gets very common between all of that is anxiety. And declared or not declared, a large population of my country, Bryn, I don't know about Canada, but in India, mental health is actually become a cause of concern. And a lot of people don't even know that, they just know that they are always tensed, they're always under pressure. Right. They don't know, they have not yet identified that maybe they need to talk about to someone, that consciousness is like, they think only the people probably are facing an alcohol problem are the ones who need to be in a meeting, but they don't realize that mental health also needs to be talked in group sessions or one-on-ones. It is very, very important, because as I was telling earlier, and which you even agreed on, Bran, that competitiveness, uh,
Mhm.
judgments, expectations, the drive for money, success, all of this adds to one's anxiety. So, sometimes it's important to focus inwards, and I think this pandemic is the right time to do. Brian, I don't know about your end, but a lot of people in my country, in fact in my city, I know, are simply cutting off. They're taking it
Right.
so easy. They just don't want to involve themselves in projects. They just want to take this time to themselves, maybe to read,
Mhm.
maybe to
Mhm.
learn something new, and give that
Mhm.
time to yourselves. I think that's a beautiful way to fight anxiety as well.
Totally.
What do you have to say? Like, I mean, this is one last question which I want to ask you. Working with volunteers, working with women, non-binary specifically, why have you chosen mainly women and non-binary as your volunteers and your subjects? And secondly, what do you feel is being done by these people in the pandemic to stay positive?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, I work mostly with women and non-binary because that's who's drawn to me. That's who's drawn to my energy. When I started, I was working with everyone, and I still do. I have one client who's male, but for the most part, the people that are drawn to what I have to offer are of those genders. And also, when you're in a group, there's a safety I find
Yeah.
that happens when it's a group solely with women and non-binary, that the participants are open up
Yes.
more
Yes.
quickly.
Correct.
They share more, they go deeper when they're in a space
Yeah.
where there is some shared experience.
True.
And yeah, I would agree with you that a lot of people are doing some deep inner healing work
Yeah.
right now. I think this is time to really take stock of your life and look at your life. And, it's kind of a reminder to all of us that life is short
Right.
and it can be short. And so, are you doing what you want to do? Are you in the relationship you want to be in? Is your career going in the direction that you want it to go in? And it's a time where you can, if you have, I think most of us have more time. I know I have more time than I used to because so many of the things I used to do are now canceled. um, to learn a new skill, or even if it's a hobby, it doesn't have to be a full career change. Maybe your career is good, it provides you with security, you're happy with your career, but
Right.
maybe there's a hobby that you've always wanted to do, and now you can
Do that.
watch videos on YouTube and
True. No, I think that's fantastic, Ron, because I think the best way that we can fight this pandemic is revisiting the memories of the past and accepting our present, and at the same time believing in a promising future. As you just said, zoom out to 10 years and see where you are, and then you would look back and just talk about this as yet another memory of learning and experience. So yes, thank you so much, Bran, for sharing. I loved your concept of core energetics, and people, if you want to know more about it, please connect with Bryn Bamber on Facebook and Instagram, and or you can know more about from my page about Bran. And I would soon be posting the video that Bran would be sharing with me about the body exercise that you can use as an anxiety buster. So I'm sure that's going to help you. Thank you, Bran, once again for taking out time in an early morning all the way from Toronto to share your knowledge with me. And I'm soon looking forward to maybe doing a one-on-one session with you, which
oh
you wanted to
yeah.
do with me, but I said no. But I would love
Mhm.
to experience that, and I will connect with you very shortly. So thank you, Bran, for being with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, viewers, and I will meet you all once again very soon with another enterprising person sharing his or her expertise with all of you. Till then, stay home and stay safe. Bye bye, Bryn.
Okay, bye.